Welcome to the COP28 Indonesia Pavilion, where we will hear from leaders on today's topic, unleashing the potential, exploring carbon trade opportunities in Indonesia and broader Southeast Asia region. For those attending the Indonesia Pavilion outside, and if you are really interested about carbon market, we would invite you to take your seats, grab coffee, and we'll be starting the panel shortly. A growing number of governments around the world and corporates are turning to carbon markets as a way to meet their commitments to address today's climate emergencies. Over 90 countries and more than 1,500 corporations have pledged to reach net zero emissions by mid-century. They now need to decide how to get there, and many are looking at carbon trading and carbon market opportunities. Not only could carbon markets can be an effective decarbonization policy, but they also represent a significant opportunity. Total value of global compliance markets is in the hundreds of billions of dollars per annum, while VCM may worth around about $1 billion US dollar right now, but they could reach up to 250 billion by 2050, based on Bloomberg NEF analysis. Today's session will aim to really deep dive on how we can unleash carbon market potential by scaling up the markets and address number one, alignment with integrity initiatives on quality definition and standard in partnership with local regulators in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, restoring market confidence, much needed, to reset growth in demands and supply. Number two, fostering project developers and originators to shape high-integrity carbon projects. In Indonesia and in ASEAN, especially working in partnership with a new alliance called ASEAN Alliance Carbon Market. You will hear more a little bit about AACM later. Number three, we aim to explore standardized contracts and products as an alternative to more bespoke OTC trades to adjust market infrastructure that fit to support exponential growth in the market that it can project it to see. Today's session is hosted by Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, in partnership with COP28 Indonesia Pavilion and Indonesia Ministry of Environment and Forestry, supported by Feratmos, Equatorize, AITA, and GCMU. We're thankful to our partners and your support on Indonesia and the region. Indonesia is one of the high-risk countries exposed to climate change, with about 40 million of our population living less than 10 meters above sea level, threatened by rising ocean. As a nation with rich biodiversity, including 94 million hectares of rainforests, 3.3 million hectares of mangroves, Indonesia has the potential to be a true global carbon sink hub. These forests and marine ecosystem can store up to 50 billion tons of carbons, offering a significant opportunity to mitigate climate change. Now, without further ado, we would like to welcome Vice Chairman of Environment and Forestry at Kadin and Director of Indica Nature, Mr. Silverius Oscar Unggul, or Bangonte. Over to you. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you, Stephen. Have a nice evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Indonesian Pavilion. Welcome to Indonesian Chambers of Commerce and Feratmos and AACM panel. We are very happy you are here. And on behalf of Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, once again, I want to thank you very much for your time, Dirk and Felipe. Yeah. Oh, Andrea, sorry. Because Felipe have a problem with the pass, yeah? His pass already finished today. So we are in the last day, yeah? So Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, I think we are very active to support our government to make sure the carbon potential in Indonesia can explore and can we get the opportunity there. I think there are many things already done in Kadin. We are working together to have try to identify policy and etc. And then we give like apa namanya, feedback or usulan apa yeah, to the government of Indonesia. So now I think we are getting better, yeah. Last COP, I think there are no trade law in Indonesia. But today, we at least can have a trade in Indonesia, yeah, domestic, in a Jakarta exchange. We hope in the future we can do another trade in Indonesia. But at least we are going well. Maybe many people say slow, but I think this is the strategy of government of Indonesia with many thinking, yeah, about the good policy for Indonesian. So in Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, we are active to engage many businesses to explore this opportunity. Also when B20 and G20 in Bali, I think we are together with friends there. We are developed, we call it Carbon Excellence, Center of Excellence. Yeah? And this is the legacy from Indonesia made along the B20 and G20. And in ASEAN, after that, in ASEAN we have a AACM for ASEAN, and I am very happy because in ASEAN and in G20 we are still active until now. And today the panel also run by Indonesian Chambers of Commerce and AACM. So once again, welcome. We hope we will have a fruitful conversation today with the distinguished panelists here, yeah, and of course our distinguished moderator. I know Stephen is a best moderator. What we have in Kadin now, yeah, we're happy to have Stephen here. So once again, thank you and enjoy the panels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Banonte, for your continued support. Next, we have an opening remarks from Mr. Dirk Forrester, President and CEO of International Emission Trading Association, IETA. Let's give a round of applause for Dirk.
Thank you very much, and it's a real delight to be in the Indonesia Pavilion to talk about carbon markets and some of the exciting developments going on around the world. My organization, the IETA, the International Emissions Trading Association, is a business group, and it's a business group of about almost 350 member companies that represent the whole value chain of carbon markets. And if you're familiar with carbon markets, you'll know that you got to have a buy side and you got to have a sell side, but you also have to have a lot of professional expertise to ensure quality, to ensure proper verification, validation, excellence in contracting. Also, there are a variety of financial players that come in to help underwrite the projects and help get them started. And all of those organizations, those types of organizations are part of IETA. So we are relatively new in the Asia region. Not that we've had membership there for many years, but recently we opened an office in Singapore so that we can have people on the ground to assist in developing more capacity in the region because we see such great potential in ASEAN. My colleague Andrea Banzani is going to be on the panel and he'll talk a little more specifically about some of our activities. But I'll say that I think one of the ways that we have approached this is to step back and look at what economic modeling studies tell us about the future of achieving Paris Agreement goals. And what we found is that use of a good, well-structured, high integrity Article 6, there is potential for the same amount of investment to double the ambition if we can all work together. And really, it's a common thing in business to collaborate through partnerships, and really that's how we see the world of Article 6. It's a way that businesses can cooperate in helping countries achieve their ambitions, but also in helping to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. This has been a real year of change in voluntary carbon markets, because we've seen, as Stephen described, a bit of a pause in those markets. They were larger a couple of years ago, but all of the carbon crediting standards are going through upgrades right now. And part of that is driven by the Integrity Council for the voluntary carbon market that is setting a new bar of integrity, a new threshold of integrity that all of those organizations will rise to meet. And similarly, on the carbon, on the buy side, the VCMI is active in sending guidance on what they think would represent responsible corporate claims. I think that with the two of those building blocks, we're really poised for another wave of growth. Of course, we want to see a good result out of the Article 6 negotiations here, and touch wood, we'll get that, but it's still underway as we meet here. But that's one of the ways that AIDA engages with the international process, is to be here as an active voice of business and for high integrity business. We're also really excited about cooperating with the new Asia Alliance, ASEAN Alliance. So we're learning more about it, but we're hoping that this will be an area that we can collaborate, bringing our members' experience and expertise to share and to work together to build markets in the ASEAN region that can, again, enable some of that potential to be realized, particularly in the area of natural climate solutions. Indonesia is so rich in natural climate solutions, and it's a benefit that really we'd like to make sure that the global aspects of that are able to, I like the way that you framed it, Stephen, about being seen as a sort of a hub and a high excellence hub. So anyway, you can count on AIDA as a trusted partner in this, and our member companies, I know, would be eager to share their insights and understanding as we advance on this journey together. Unfortunately, I have to go to another pavilion for yet another event, but it's been a delight to be with you, and I'll leave you in the capable hands of Andrea. Thank you again, Stephen, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks.
I don't know if this is it's working. Thank you, Dirk. I think it's great to hear perspectives on IATA around where we are heading, and we also welcome the warmth and the aspiration for ASEAN Alliance Carbon Market and Indonesia. The region can work even closer with IATA as you guys looking at Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia more closely. Now, we are moving to our panel discussion. So let me sit down here, and I'm joined by distinguished panel speakers. The first speaker, we are lucky to be joined by a great champion from Indonesia and Southeast Asia, Natalia Rialuki Marsudi, CEO and founder of Feratmos. Please join me on stage. Give a round of applause. Ria is a CEO of Feratmos, a carbon credit marketplace that offsetting personal or a company's greenhouse gas emission by purchasing carbon credits from the platform, which are sourced only from premium and curated projects. Before launching Feratmos, Ria was a Chief Strategy and Social Impact Officer at Tani Hub, an agri-tech startup which helped farmers grow their business by selling produce on an online platform. She studied international relations at the University of Indonesia and got her MBA from University of California, Berkeley, and INSEAD. Coming up next, we're joined by Andrea Bozzani, International Policy Director at IETA. Let's give her a round of applause. Andrea, please join me on stage. Thank you. Andrea is Policy Director at International IETA. Andrea joined IETA in October 2021, where he leads activities on international carbon markets and Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. He's also visiting professor at Sciences Po in Paris and College of Europe in Natolin. Prior to joining IETA, he worked at EDF Trading in London, Statoil, now Equinor, in Brussels. Prior to joining EDF in 2013, he held positions in the EU Public Affairs and Regulatory Affairs for the Norwegian Oil and Gas Group. Great. Now, what we'll do, Ria and Andrea, is that we're going to focus the first round of questions on the region, ASEAN. This year, Indonesia has chaired ASEAN, so it's the successful year of ASEAN chairmanship. Now we're going to do a deep dive on Indonesia, and then we'll come to the audience for any questions that you want to know around Indonesia or the region. We're lucky to have great experts here, and we'll kick off that way. How does that sound? Sounds good? Do you want to check your mic so that you have your mic with you?
Check. Yes.
Yes? Perfect. Great. Okay, well, let me start with you, Ria. Looking at Southeast Asia region, you know, there has been a number of excitement in the market with the launch of Indonesia Carbon Exchange that Bang Onte mentioned, hosted by IDX, and a growing momentum in ASEAN countries around VCM and compliance market. Could you please share how Feratmos and your tech solution can help scaling VCM in Indonesia and in the region? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Bang Onte and Kadin, for having me. Just want to check whether the slides are on.
I think the slides has been loaded, so we'll check.
Okay. Maybe it's great to have a quick introduction, a little bit about Feratmos, so then I can also share a little bit about our perspectives in the market. If we go to the next slide, so we are actually a climate technology company based in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. We build proprietary technology to assess carbon stock potential, to actually develop carbon project through digital monitoring tool as well, in the spirit of transparency, accessibility, and democratic access to carbon market. And we already have worked in 3 countries across Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, Malaysia, and in Laos, working with more than 110 asset owners, developing primarily nature-based solutions, and really trying to reflect what does it mean by being high quality, by really being very transparent and very firm in our data source in terms of how does each tree perform in capturing the carbon that we all intend to do. And in this today's panel, I'm also the deputy lead for the AACM, working very closely with Stephen and Pak Darsono in order to really unlock the potential of Asian carbon market. If you go to the next slide, we see that Southeast Asia potential in terms of carbon market, we look at it in 2 types of lens. One as a supply side, and the second is as a demand or some market side. We see that Southeast Asia has always been a major player in terms of supplying quality credits in the global scheme of carbon markets. If you remember the previous regime of Kyoto Protocol and CDM, actually Vietnam is the 4th largest producer of carbon credit inside the CDM, as well as in Indonesia as well. We already produced a couple of the 3 largest nature-based solutions projects in the voluntary carbon market as well. So for Indonesia and Southeast Asia, we see that the market of supply is actually very abundant. And this region is very, very unique to its nature-based potential. I'm not saying that renewable technology-based credits are not there, because a lot of great cookstove project, renewable energy credits, especially in the one that has been launched in Indonesia, SRN or Indonesia Exchange, is also technology-based. But why is nature-based very unique is because we are the region that at least 10.5% of our collective GDP is contributed from follow economy. So in the spirit of, developing hand-in-hand a sustainable economy, it matters to think about how do we still produce this economic growth engine sustainably, right? So knowing this potential of being able to extract or process folu or like forest and other land use potential in a sustainable way, the question is, in the long run, we actually have a big potential to produce also carbon credit from the folu sector. Together with Boston Consulting Group, we assess that at least 300 million is the potential for carbon credit from folu sector in Southeast Asia by 2030, and beyond that is actually very, very high. But if Stephen was also asking about, what's the bottleneck? What are the challenges? If you can go to the next slide. This abundance of potential actually has quite a lot of problems in order to unlock that. One is, how do we really solve the technical barrier? The process of certifying credit in any standards at the moment is still very difficult. Of course, the science is difficult. How do you actually measure carbon dioxide that is captured by different trees? How do you measure that the different tree height and growth actually possesses different types of captures as well? So we are already in the level that the technology advancement to really understand more about our forest and forest capability is very different. So how do we actually ease the calculations, the science on the technical barrier, so then not only people who have forest degrees and engineering degrees can do the measurement, but everyone, each and every one of us, previously palm oil concession owner, previously timber concession owner, who only think about the only way to generate economic value out of the land is to extract out of those forests, now can really think about the alternative income, right? How about looking into carbon credits as a potential income as well? The second one is the high capex as well, because the knowledge and the technology, for example, to do a re-wetting of peatland and really to measure, installing all the air flux to really measure the level of carbon that is actually captured is also very, very high cost. How do we also reduce this high capex as well? And last but not least, even if you've done everything right, and I think this is unique to 2022, and I believe Andrea will share more about this, even if we've done everything right, how do we prove that the project is of high integrity to the buyers or to the investors, so then we can basically also communicate the value of the carbon project itself? So these are the three main problems in the supply side that Atmos is trying to tackle by technology. Really automating or making it free for everyone to assess remote sensing technology to assess carbon stock. So anyone, 100 asset owners of them can understand if their area is eligible, because not area is eligible, and I'm very surprised that I thought the term carbon cowboys was only in Indonesia, but apparently it's a global term that apparently people say that, just don't touch the forest, you can make it carbon. No, right? Because there needs to be, additionally, there needs to be a permanence, there needs to be very, very strong reason why your area that you're protecting is worth of carbon credit. So we automate a lot of things to really make the science more useful to people, so then we can know the value. And we also develop digital monitoring technology, marrying airborne devices, sensors that you put in the forest, camera traps that you link into to capture biodiversity health, as well as community performance, community well-being performance by digitizing a lot of the data stock taking as well. Really, the goal is, why don't we have more projects that is, being welcomed by, being championed by communities, by people who didn't have any background in forestry at all, right? Now, that's on the supply side, and do let me know if I have short time, but if we go to the 2 minutes, okay, fine. I'll take that challenge. If we go to the demand side, this is what AACM is championing. If we go to the next slide, ASEAN, or Southeast Asian countries, are very dynamic. We have very different approaches in embracing carbon market, but the point is that all of the Southeast Asian countries are very active in actually embracing how to integrate carbon market. Some countries already, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore already launched their own exchanges, right? And now talking more and more closer towards how do we integrate all of the certification and the registry. Some countries are actually very open already, and doing countries such as Singapore already doing MOUs with other ASEAN countries as well, to build the demand and the synchronization between the standards as well. So if we go to the next slide, that's actually the spirit that ASEAN Alliance on Carbon Market wants to uphold. This will be the platform where both private and public engage to talk about what are the experience in different countries in Southeast Asia to really, build what is best, what kind of system is best for their own country. Just one, qualifier that I want to make is that Southeast Asia countries, we built the carbon market mechanism not 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, not in the Kyoto Protocol days, actually in post-Paris Agreement days. So there's already a lot of learnings in which these countries need to consider when integrating it into their own domestic systems to really being able to maximize the value and achieve the goal of really preserving the nature. So ASEM is a legacy project that Indonesia as an ASEAN Summit Chair this year established, but the intention is to have a board of a sounding board for each country to really, is this, what are the different mechanisms to set carbon pricing? What are the different mechanisms when we want to think about carbon tax, right? So it will be like the platform to learn together, and hopefully we can scale carbon markets, be it voluntary or compliance market, as needed by each country and the best way that they can use to unlock their own potential. Maybe that's a little bit brief and prologue from me, so I'm happy to also entertain any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Welcome back again as Feratmos. It's great to hear you have been very active not only in Indonesia but also in Southeast Asia. And I think we need more people who are looking at multiple markets. And we'll come back to ASEM because I'm sure the audience may want to know a little bit, how to join, how to get involved, that sort of thing. But I'll come to Andrea now. Andrea, how do you see pathways to restore market confidence to boost growth in demands and supply, of high integrity projects across Southeast Asia, right? And if you could share some of specific ITA initiatives that can help key players in the space to watch out, that would be great. Over to you, Andrea.
Certainly. Thanks, Stephen, for the invite. Thanks for the question. Good afternoon, everyone. So if we look at what stopped the growth of the market, which has been remarkable for at least 3 years between 2019 to 2022, it has been primarily two things. One was very negative press, news stories that were highlighting the shortcomings of the market, the lack of integrity of certain projects. And 2023 have been a very bad year on that front. We started in January with the Guardian articles that was picking up some research. And then we had almost every month a new story uncovering the shortcomings of projects. So one is that. The second one has been criticism of companies that were using carbon credits. So there was a perception that carbon credits were the substitute of real action, decarbonization of the company's own operation. It was seen as a way to greenwash, to mislead the consumer. And whether we agree or not, I do not agree. And there have been studies also that show the companies that use carbon credits, also the ones that are decarbonizing faster. But the perception is there, and some NGOs have even taken companies to court. And the result has been that with these two factors playing out, companies that were voluntarily engaging on the market decided to stop engaging, or at least not increasing the purchases that they were making. And the growth forecast, which were very optimistic until last year, now if we look at some of the reports published, they almost look silly, but because they were forecasting growth that just didn't happen. So we have to solve these two problems, and there are two initiatives, and ITA is part of the Secretariat of one of them and coordinating closely with the others. They're trying to look at these two problems. It's the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Market, ICVCM. They're looking at the integrity of the supply of credits. So it was mentioned by our CEO, Dirk Forrester, in his welcome remarks, by publishing a set of criteria that all crediting programs and projects need to comply with. We will have a label very soon, and that label, called the CCP, the Core Carbon Principle, will help us understand what carbon credits are good and comply with these criteria and what are not. So that should give buyers some confidence that the credits that they are buying are of sufficient quality. The other initiative is VCMI, Voluntary Carbon Market Initiative, and it's about providing some guidance around the use of these credits. So they will also issue some labels. They call them gold, silver, and bronze. And basically, companies can claim that they achieved a certain level certified by VCMI, and this will show the public and all stakeholders involved that well, the company is doing certain things, is using carbon credit the way they should be used, not as a substitute to other types of effective climate action. So this initiative, must be said, they've been ongoing for a number of years. The ICBCM was launched in 2020 with a different name. That was way before the negative publicity, and it shows that the market was taking this problem seriously. It has for some time. So we hope in the short term we will see the result of this process. As AITA, we're also involved in the Climate Action Data Trust, or CAT Trust for short. It is based in the region. It's based in Singapore. It's a collaboration of AITA, the World Bank, and the government of Singapore. And it's effectively a meta-registry, or a platform that will receive data from all participating registries, and that will allow to have data in one repository in a comparable format and public accessible, so that all interested parties can review these information. So we solve the problems related to potential double counting, double crediting, and it will give reassurances to users of carbon credits, to governments, that the registry, the information contained on the registry is robust. We've had some registries of the voluntary market connecting. We had at this COP, we announced that the first country connected its registry. It's Bhutan. We hope to have several more. We do hope to have the SRN of Indonesia connecting soon when ready, and it will enable to have a system where multiple registries can operate without concern. Then the final thing we're doing is ramping up our communications effort. It's not just AITA, but it's the whole industry that needs to do that. Some of the stories that were published were correct. Some projects were not doing the right thing, were not of good quality, but has been a lot of emotional language being used, emotional stories that right or wrong, they resonate quite well. And the industry initially was responding to these stories with technical rebuttals, technical discussions that the reader of newspapers, the consumer of media would not understand, would not care about. So I think we need to respond to emotional stories with emotional stories, and show all the good things that carbon credits do. And this is particularly relevant for an audience in the global north. We are very remote from the MBS projects that you mentioned, the impact of cookstove projects, for example. So, well, when all you hear is about the projects going wrong, you just tend to discount the whole industry as not serious, not capable of playing a role in the fight against climate change, in sustainable development. So I think we really need to do work on that. If I have time, I'll make one last point. It's about moving beyond purely voluntary demand. I know this market is called VCM, Voluntary Carbon Market. That's how it started. But I think if we really want to scale, we cannot simply rely on voluntary demand only. Some companies will continue to go above and beyond their obligations, but I think to provide a solid basis to this market, we need mandatory demand. We need compliance markets. And there are some examples in the region. Singapore is signed a lot of bilateral agreements with countries worldwide. They also implement Article 6 in a way that we really like because they leverage the existing infrastructure of the VCM, the independent standards and so on. Thailand is another example. They authorized the second ITMO ever after Ghana. It was early this year, carbon credit generated by e-buses in Bangkok. And then also more recently, Norway and Indonesia signed a bilateral agreement for cooperation under Article 6. So I'm really curious to see what will happen next in this case. So I think, and then I can mention also the ETS in Indonesia, that it's a clear case of a new compliance market being established. So I really think I'm excited by this development. I think we should move faster, and so really look forward to the discussion here and the Q&A. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you, Andrea. And I think it's, one thing that really resonates with me is that the media perception on the whole industry, they're hoping for perfection, aren't they? But I think in reality, any commodities, whether they are rice, or whether they are silver or securities, whether they are mortgages, whether they are sovereign debt, right? There are the bad, there are the good, and there are the great AAA's rating. And I think, moving to a more pragmatic views, in reality, there will be NBS that are at the greatest quality, highest integrity, and there are those that bad. But how can we work with that sort of classification? So I really applaud what VCMI and ICVCM is doing. I do think that perfection has stopped, put us at a standstill. But if we really want to ramp it up, I do think that we just need to be realistic and let the market price premiums or not, or discount to some of these. Now, I want to go one more specific on Indonesia, to Ria, right? I do want to get your thoughts as a local champion here. What one potential intervention might be that can really help Indonesia unlock its carbon trading potential? And we'll come to Andrea as well. Over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Stephen. It's a tough question. It's like, in the startup world, you do like, what is the one thing if you have a magic wand to do, right? So it is definitely a multi-layered. I think learning for all the successful countries who has implemented vibrant and thriving carbon markets, there's definitely not only regulatory but also readiness in terms of project and supply as well as the demand. I would say I think not only for Indonesia but just representing the entire region and maybe the emerging countries that wants to start embracing carbon markets is really also a little bit of clarity on how the global system is defining things. And I guess this is also what Dirk was mentioning about how hopeful we are about this COP to publish what it means, of being high integrity, high transparency, because as an agreement of standard actually reflects also price and value. Because without those clarity, I guess it's still quite difficult. Even if we already have the infrastructure, even if we have the capability and the projects, but market wouldn't be activated if those things are still unclear. I believe Indonesia as well as other countries in Southeast Asia are very active and very progressive in trying to push for different regulation to clear out. I think particularly for Indonesia with the approach of going like what Andrea also mentioned, more compliance route to set up the Indonesia system registry national. I think that's a very bold move, and that would that explains why it requires quite a lot of setup in order to do it right. So I guess having more, guidance and principles that serves both emerging markets as well as more mature markets that would also require good quality of carbon credits will be very, very helpful.
Thank you, Ria. Same question to you, Andrea. If you have a magic wand, what do you think one potential intervention might be?
So I could give you a short answer, but I'll give you the long one and qualify my short one, which I mentioned in the end. So first of all, yes, we're touching wood. We are hoping that negotiations will provide helpful guidance. But I think it's no longer the time to sit around and wait for these negotiations to end. I asked a negotiator on a panel on the first week, when would the negotiation end? And she told me that they will never end because negotiators are very good at keep negotiating. Fortunately, in the Paris Agreement, we have two market mechanisms. We have a centralized crediting scheme under 6.4, and that's a bit like the new version of the CDM. And for that mechanisms to start, yes, we do need guidance to be adopted. We need decisions here at COP. But then we have 6.2. And 6.2 is a framework that allows countries to set up their own cooperative approaches, as they called. And for that to start, the main decisions have already been taken in Glasgow at COP26. And countries now, yes, they are discussing further detail, further guidance, but by and large, what needs to be there to start cooperating and trading has already been decided. And we've had examples: Switzerland, Ghana, Switzerland, Thailand, Singapore signing bilateral agreements. So I do hope more countries follow this path, and they don't just wait for an end to the negotiations that will probably never end. So Indonesia, I think, is doing some things really in the right way. They launched an ETS. They are looking to expand that to more sectors. They have a carbon exchange. So this, for a country of the level of income as Indonesia, is quite remarkable. Not all countries are so advanced on their journey in carbon markets. And what I would change if I had the magic wand is to open up the Indonesian market to international trade. I know, well, foreign companies can theoretically register on the Jakarta Stock Exchange and do trade the units issued in the CRN, but really to have meaningful engagement, we need to have a more open system with multiple standards, with an easier way to trade for international companies. The current Article 6 guidance allows for the trade of international credits, with or without corresponding adjustment. That's a decision of the host country, Indonesia in this case. So I don't have a magic wand, and no one has it. These things take time, but if I had it, I would say this is one thing I would change in Indonesia, because the potential of Indonesia is enormous, as we all know, and there's so much reductions and removals that can be achieved by allowing international players into the space.
Thank you, Andre. And also to quote from Chairman of Kadin, Pak Arsyad Rashid, he quoted that the world will not be able to achieve net zero without Indonesia Global Carbon Sink Hub. And I think for Indonesia to internationalize or actually to have interoperability, right, between what Indonesia has, the local registry and the local carbon exchange, great. But the question is, to what extent that interoperability-ness is able to help champion Indonesia so that the world can also access that, something that I underline. Now, we want to open to Q&A questions. So we want to hear from the audience if you have any particular interest on Indonesia or ASEAN. We'll probably take 3 questions first. I see there are 3 questions, and then there is one round of questions I want to get through. So if the organizer can help with the mic, please, later. So if you could introduce who you are, who you represent, and the question very briefly, that would be great. First one, gentleman over here.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ria, thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Stephen, for a wonderful discussion on Indonesia. I work for BP. My name is Udi Agarwal, and I sit out of the Chicago office. It's wonderful to just get a bird's eye view on what's going on in Indonesia. I have two questions, one for anybody and then one specifically for you, Ria. I'll go to you first. One of the things you mentioned around demand-side challenges in Indonesia is the supply-side integrity, which is very real and very true, and fully agreed with you on that. But what's the local demand in Indonesia like? Or what's the demand within Southeast Asia? And what kinds of projects or what kinds of requirements are those buyers that are more local appreciating? Because I am concerned a little bit about this globalization of integrity, but what's the local view on demand side, or from the demand side, what's their view on integrity? And then the second question, and I'll keep it brief, is we saw over the last couple of years this push as countries recognize the value of carbon credits towards regulation, and sometimes that bleeds into nationalization. And so we were hurt by that. We were investors in a couple of projects that were, there was a moratorium on the sale and export of those credits, which was in Indonesia. And so that was an unfortunate outcome of the rulemaking process. That's been cleared up now. The registry's been set up. But are you concerned going forward as project developers, as participants, Andrea, as you look at the carbon markets more broadly, are you concerned of that risk of nationalization and the moratorium on the export and sale of credits going forward? Thanks.
Thank you. Should we just maybe answer the questions, and then we'll come back to the Jen there, and then the third guy, if that's okay. We'll answer first, yes. We'll answer, and then we'll come back to the Jens. And I see two questions. Do you want to answer the local demands in Southeast Asia?
Yeah. Thanks, Rudy. I guess I can share on the local demand. I would say, in general, as a region, it's not as mature as the European or US market. As you know, only very few countries enable infrastructure as equivalent as carbon tax, right? I think it's only Singapore, and I think Thailand is one of also the more mature one in setting up their compliance to already have sectoral targets as well. So I would say it is growing, but without strong national regulation to push for demand. And if we only rely on voluntary, I think we only see demands from publicly listed companies, companies who are doing exports. I think is expected outcome of CBAM, I would say. But in terms of the requirement of the local or regional demand, we did a quick survey actually. A big majority, more than 77%, actually still prefer internationally traded and internationally standardized credits. So I guess there's still some homework for each individual countries to really mainstream its own certification. But in terms of what type they prefer, and I think we'll launch this as a part of the AECM report as well. Most of the local and regional demand wants more nature-based and strong community impact projects rather than the more technology-based. I think it's also a big reflection of how they know forest and nature-based solutions means more than just climate action vehicle. I can touch on the national. Do you want to touch on naturalization?
Well, say a few words from the perspective of a company, of an investor, of a developer. A moratorium, a nationalization is a very negative event that we should try and avoid. In the case of Indonesia, it has been almost 2 years. The rule-making progress has advanced. When I talk to my members, I still see that they find it very difficult to operate on a standard that's only national. There are issues with the trading on the exchange, with the methodologies in the national registry. So I think times are ripe to really start the discussion on mutual recognition or interoperability, whatever we want to call it, especially now that I believe the government has built the capacity, the understanding of the market that they need to make sure they regulate what they want to regulate, but also allowing the private sector to operate and to operate effectively and unleash the potential that we all know Indonesia has in this market.
Maybe just one point, I guess specifically as a project developer, how we're seeing it, right? I think what you see in Indonesia right now is a partial manifestation of what the country would like to or intend to. Because if we follow the presidential decree and how it translates towards ministerial decree and like technical regulation, right? The presidential decree and the national direction is still acknowledging the role of internationally recognized standards that as broad as it is, right? And also still acknowledging that there will be or there could be a mechanism that will allow different kinds of exchange of outcomes, mitigation outcomes, right? So hopefully what we see right now, it's progress towards that. I mean, in our day-to-day working with the ministry, it's something that it is, hopefully it's progressing day by day. What is happening right now, I guess the moratorium and the pause has become like a moment to do a reset. So hopefully, I mean, as a project developer, we already have 10 projects up and coming, and we know in the ministry there are 200 more actually in line. So we still want to keep confidence. It will take a long time, but I guess for people who's doing business in Indonesia knows that good things take time. So hopefully it will come out. Yeah. Thanks.
If I just want to share, I think what we're hopeful from COP28 is the movement from Indonesia and Norwegia, for this pilot ITMOs. And the hope is that it can really unlock new movements in Indonesia to unlock new things. And second part, this is the role that Indonesia Chamber, Kadin and AACM is really hoping to highlight is, where's the money? Listening to investors that wanting to put their money creating or supporting new green jobs in Indonesia are super important. That's why I think this dialogue happened, because we want to listen to investors more and then show it to Indonesia government, coordinating Ministry of Maritime Investment Affairs and the relevant ministries on how much value we can draw from the overall carbon markets, whether it's NBS or biochar or blue carbon and so on, right? This is for the benefit of Indonesia and the jobs that will be created. So I think, the AACM has the opportunity to put value on those. Something that, with more to come in 2024. That's great questions. Thank you. I think the second question's coming from the gentleman there. Yes. If you could introduce your name.
Osaki, the Hokkaido University, Japan. And so I'm studying the natural capital, especially focusing on the forestry. And we calculate the value of the natural capital forestry, which is very high compared to how to control the environment using the industrial technology, maybe the 1,000 or sometimes 10,000 higher values. But unfortunately, we cannot to evaluate this kind of the forestry function. And so now just focusing the carbon, but for environment, the management, and so which is very related to the climate change or global warming, not only the carbons. So how to evaluate of this kind of the natural capitals? And you say the nature-based solution, which is very also important, but the nature-based solution may be one part of the including carbon, but another element is more high the values. And so I want to know how to involving or integrate it several the function of the forestry, and how to make something credit, not only the carbon. Do you have some ideas into something integration what to say the value of, and so focusing biodiversity and carbon, and also another the water cycling and the soil erosion protection, for how to binding and make a more high the value of the credit.
Thank you. Very timely questions on especially a lot of nature-based solution and the Indonesia rainforest, right, certainly has a strong biodiversity and nature value to it. Andre, do you want to take this, then go to Ria?
Well, not all carbon credits are the same, and the standards, the issuing bodies are starting to recognize that by issuing, attaching labels to credits. So there are SDG scores, biodiversity scores that can allow the savvy buyers to pick the credits that they also, on top of carbon, they deliver on other objectives that they particularly care about. Also in parallel, there are programs that are trying to develop credits for biodiversity. This is a very, very nascent space, and on which I'm not an expert, but I thought I just mentioned that this is being created. So it's certainly an area that is being considered by the carbon credit industry and all stakeholders. So I think I'll just stop there. Not much.
I think that there is a growing number of folks at the TNFD, Task Force for Nature, Financial Disclosure, the equivalent of TCFD, but for nature. I think ASEAN need to take a look on this biodiversity, right? It's something that we're hoping to engage more. I just went to the Bloomberg Natural Capital. I think there is a growing appreciation that biodiversity plays an important role. But I think there are questions around how to, people know how to value carbon, I think. Biodiversity, far from it, I think. So it's something that, please do share your academic experience from Kyoto University on how ASEAN can also learn and champion this together. I believe the third question from the Jen there. There are a lot of gens. I see two questions. We have received 0 questions from ladies. Just saying. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there. My name's Mark Tilley. I'm with Carbon Pulse. I was just having a question for you, Nalia. Last week, your Fair Atmos signed an agreement with the Vietnam CT Group, just talking about using your technologies to help them and expertise to ensure that Vietnam can improve the quality of its carbon projects and help it work towards its NDCs. I was just wondering if you could provide a bit more detail about what that agreement involves. Yes.
This one's a short one.
Yeah.
Thanks. From Carbon Post. Yes, we had the privilege to sign an MOU together with Citigroup. So we scanned the market. We believe Citigroup is one of the pioneers in launching an exchange in Vietnam for carbon exchange. So basically, their vision is to build the exchange, but then how do we make sure there's supply? So our role coming in is to help the group and actually also the country in general to assess the potential carbon potential from the nature-based solutions. And then whenever there is a good project, then we are we'll be happy to help them co-develop, but also particularly in already integrating a lot of the digital monitoring tool, because the group also has a very strong IoT and AI division as well, basically to also just learn together, because Vietnam is also one of the countries that has a very good reforestation rate as well. So I guess it's also to learn how to scale those learnings as well across the region. Happy to talk more. Thank you.
Great. 2 more questions there, I see. And then we have 1 round of questions. Maybe we go to the Jen and then to the last one.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your panel. And I'm Kaz from Daiichi Life. And today, I heard about the kind of discussion about the nature-based solution. And when we look at the kind of carbon market, also the avoided emission is maybe one more kind of a source of the kind of GHG reduction. And I think the avoided emission is a kind of very important for carbon credit to kind of capital flow from developed countries to developing countries. But at the same time, the carbon credit from avoided emission is just kind of carbon neutral, not a net zero. So my question is, how do you kind of treat the avoided emission in the kind of Indonesian carbon market? And do you have a kind of a more stringent kind of a criteria for avoided emission? Thank you.
So thanks, I think, Kath, for the question. The way we typically do it is we try to adhere to a proven or internationally acknowledged standard already. So, and as you know, after 2022, standards evolve. So there's always new definition and new way of really upholding the integrity of how do you measure avoided emission. The latest update and the most adhered to methodology right now is on the jurisdictional level. So it really tried to not silence but recalibrate the potential noises or potential fluctuations that each project level can do. That's why you scale it up on a jurisdictional level. I think different standards and different countries right now are, you know, the standard is one thing, but also the numbers that make that is important, right? What is actually the real baseline, right? And I guess there's still ongoing work on this. I think our approach, we always try to follow the latest because as a project developer, honestly, we try to make sure we assess the project potential as true as it is. So we trust the scientists to find the best way to measure it. But then I believe where we are today is already quite a big progress from where we were before. And also, I guess now that more standards and more people looking at it, there are more variables that is being considered. So at least for us, we, as much as possible, we follow the science-based proven methodology. And basically, after that, we also just adhere to the country's recognition of the standards.
Just before going to Andre, I think one thing that we should look at is more on the coal power plant early decommissioning, because there is quite a clear how much emission they can yield 20 years from now. And if that can be avoided, would be an interesting sort of carbon market play that can also improve the economics of early decommissioning power plant. I don't know, Aitza, if you have a view on that newer asset class type.
No, we do believe methodologies have to be developed, and it's certainly very clear that if you decommission coal plants earlier, you reduce emissions, you do good to the climate. If it's additional, if it's demonstrated that the finance coming from credits is necessary to trigger that retirement, it's certainly an area that we will support. And I know there's work being done in the US with the ETA on that. Also, Singapore has more recently launched what will perhaps become the Singapore version of the ETS, more focused on Southeast Asia. So we're watching those initiatives quite closely. And I wanted to add a point on removals versus avoidance or reductions, whatever we want to call it. In the longer run, yes, all emissions have to be balanced by removals. That's also in the Paris Agreement. But until we get there, there's a big role for reductions or avoidance credits to be played. We have so much to do that I think by only focusing on removals, we will miss opportunities to do what is needed to keep temperatures under a certain threshold. And then we will get into paradoxical situation. We don't want avoidance credits, so you don't protect the forest, but after it's been destroyed, you just replant and rebuild the new forest, which doesn't make any sense. And also, going back to co-benefits, it's not as good for biodiversity, for local communities. And this doesn't only apply to forests, it applies to all types of reduction credits. So I think we shouldn't give a negative characterization of reduction and avoidance credits.
Thank you. And the last questions below there. Sorry, that's our last question. If you ask no, at the very end over there. He's first. If you ask your question real quick, I'm hoping to squeeze in one more.
Okay, I'll try. My name is Colin Moore. I work for the Wildlife Conservation Society in the Mekong. We develop RED projects as a way to finance our conservation sites. My question relates to, there's obviously this desire to scale nature-based solutions, both because of its emission reduction potential and the perceived benefits it can deliver both for biodiversity and for local communities. the market is moving in a direction of demanding higher integrity, higher quality. We're seeing this as part of the initiatives. But then, Natalia, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about some of those fundamental challenges around the demand for integrity, but then the increasing requirements on projects, the technical requirements, the reporting requirements, the ability to deliver not just quality on the emission reduction, but on the biodiversity outcome and the social outcome. I guess this is maybe a bit of a crystal ball question, but there's a fundamental tension between those two. The narrative is that we need to do both, but ultimately, from a reality on the ground, and I see this in our projects, to get scale, it can't be both. So I guess it's a bit of a question, maybe, Andrea, you from the global policy, and maybe Natalia, if you can talk about how this is being thought of or dealt with in the Indonesian regulations. How are we going to solve that ultimately that tension so that we do get the scale we need to fundamentally address climate change?
Yeah. Thank you, Colin, for the question. Let's take one more question so we can squeeze in last one. Question for the lady. Second row, please.
Hi, my name is Wei Wei. I'm from the Singapore Ministry of Trade and Industry. So I'm just responding to a call for a female voice to add to the questions.
Thank you.
My question is actually to Ibu Natalia. I really like to congratulate Indonesia on your leadership for the AACM initiative. I think the private sector is very critical in moving a lot of the discussions between governments as well. I'm personally leading the G2G negotiations for Article 6.2 cooperation, and we really like to see how we can actually enable more private sector to be part of the AACM so that we can also push for greater speed in terms of government-to-government cooperation. So we'd like to just maybe hear your views on that and how we can work closer together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's...
Maybe I'll take the first question and then you can take both. As you said, from a global policy perspective, well, I acknowledge this question. I think we shouldn't make the perfect credit the enemy of a good credit. We don't want bad credits, but we have to acknowledge realities on the ground. But also I think we have to acknowledge that you can't have quality if you pay $2, $3, $5 a ton. And that's why I say we cannot simply rely on voluntary demand for scale, because some companies are buying permanent removal credits at hundreds of dollars a ton, but that's really a very small section of the economy. Then if we want to scale, we need to move progressively into compliance or semi-compliance mechanisms. So that would be my policy solutions to this very real tension for project developers.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I've been an advocate for the new wave of climate finance to take a look at this as well as one big gap in order to really flow the money to where it's needed the most and most impactful. But the second of all, I would also highlight that I guess in the actors or stakeholders of carbon markets, there are new tech players that only have, very specialist angle to really fill in those roles in order to be able to connect, what does integrity means into numbers and hopefully procuring it in a lesser amount of money than how much it used to. So I guess I would also just to highlight that the way we always position ourselves as a climate tech company and a project developer, for existing projects, we try to just introduce our tools. If in case it can be helpful to translate that all of the good work recorded in more digital way and translated into the data that is accessible for investors, is it something could be of help? So I guess I'm hopeful eventually the technology sector can also try to pick up this gap. It's not immediate. Like maybe early days of solar panel, it has been it was very expensive, but then it went down to like a couple of cents per meter square. So I guess hopefully that time will come as well to nature-based solutions as well. And I guess last to just close thanks Vivek for the question. So AACM is officially launched today. Yay! So thank you for all the support. I guess you will be seeing more of us. We will be posting more in the Carbon Center of Excellence platform, as well as you'll see us later in more LinkedIn and website pages. But basically, we have a registration form for any private companies. We do two types of outreach. One is the one that we officially outreach when we do roadshows as a part of the ASEAN Summit, G2G and B2B as well. But we also will now activate more, invitations so people can also join in. But hopefully, the best acquisition tool is, seeing the work that we do. We'll be publishing a report that I just, snapshot a little bit in the presentation, more about the state of the market, so then anyone can be a part and take a part of the AACM. Thanks, Vivek.
Just on AACM, we have over 40 members now all across Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Indonesia, and Singapore, and so on. We would love to work with the G2G negotiators like yourself. Our chair, Pak Darsono Hartono, that I think is tuning in live right now, would love to work with you guys, because I think private sector need to be informed by the direction of travel, and also offering what can we do to support. I think sometimes what we recognize, every markets will have their own way of doing things. They perhaps only talk to each other during COP28, whereas the chair of ASEAN back in Indonesia and Singapore and Brunei, they talk to each other at least 4 times in a year. And we're really hoping to work with the chair of Business Association in Southeast Asia and regulators to really make a meaningful impact in 3 ways. Allow me to share, because I'm responsible in the international deputy head, and our chair, Pak Darsono, working with the rotating co-chairs as well, with Laos and so on. We're working on the supply generation to educate more project developers, whether they are active project developers or prospective. Perhaps some of the family groups, they already have some forestry assets, but they don't know what to do with it, whether they wish to chop it down or perhaps to conserve it with additionality. So that's what our focus on. The second piece around infrastructure and working and being respectful of local carbon exchanges and registry to promote interoperability. And number 3, around the demand. How can we restore faith, restore confidence from corporate buyers, whether they are from American, Japan, European buyers on carbon credits, so that they think of Indonesia or Southeast Asia carbon offsets as top of mind. Because surely there is Latin America, Brazil, and Africa, Mozambique, and we really want to be the top of choice, really, in the world for them. So I think there is a registration form to end the call to action. We also will be publishing regularly a monthly newsletter. And in fact, we got a request online that all of us attending here should be part, we'll do a group photo, because we want to publish it to the ASEAN and Indonesia community on what to be a starting, a new chapter, as we move ahead 2024. I don't have any time left to ask question on the looking ahead question. But please do stay in touch via LinkedIn. I'll be asking Ria and Andrea on what are their top 3 upcoming initiatives in 2024. Ria has some exciting stuff on Vietnam, Indonesia with Pertamina and other things. But I was hoping they can share now. But I've been asked to substitute it with a group photo, so I don't have time to ask. But you can ask Ria directly, and also to you, Andrea, on some of your upcoming Asia sort of climate summit, North America climate summit. I'm doing a bit of plugs for Lisa. I'm sure she'll be very happy. I think IATA has been a tremendous partner to really convene the right people in the room. So we're very thankful. So allow me to just say closing remarks before inviting everyone on stage for a group photo. This session is hosted by Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, in partnership with COP28 Indonesia Pavilion and Ministry of Environment and Forestry, supported by Feratmos, Equatorize, IATA, and GCMU. Let's give a round of applause for our great panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you.